Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Eric Hadik, president of InsideTrack.com. Welcome back to the show, Eric.
Thanks for having me back, Jim. Great to be here.
The Middle East has you taking a look at charts. What's going on there?
Well, I've been talking about there's kind of this correlation that I've been discussing and calling it the game changer, the game standing for gold in the Middle East. But, of course, the oil markets have really been the lead indicator there. I guess I'd have to go back to my broader outlook first and then narrow it down to some of the more specific analysis of recent months. But I have been focused on the time frame of 2018 to 2021, really been discussing that for over a decade, where just these very long-term cycles that I see would be coming to a head. And one of the things that I concluded 10, 12 years ago, and I still think will be the case, is that you're going to see a pretty sharp restructuring of the Middle East and ultimately a Middle East union come during that time frame. So I have certainly been looking for events and kind of precursor things to either that further validate and confirm that analysis or to possibly negate it. But again, that has been something that I've been discussing really. I've been focused on that time frame for almost 20 years since I did these what I called cycle of time reports back in 1999 and 2000 and talked about this giant 360-year cycle that, much like a giant clock or a giant circle of 360 degrees, was indicating a shift during this time. And I recognize that discussions like that can get very esoteric. So, when I do address things like that, I'll do it as a backdrop and then take it down to more practical and more objective analysis. But even back then, I was looking for a few key confirming indicators, and one of the real critical ones was cycles that came into play in 2010, 2011, when several years before I was writing that I thought we'd see a big shakeup in the Middle East and some upheaval and overthrow, and lo and behold, the Arab Spring came about right in that time frame. And all that did was just powerfully reinforce to me the outlook for the end of this decade, 2018 to 2021. So I continue to watch for things that are corroborating that. And with that said, earlier in the year, I documented these cycles that I had researched regarding Saudi Arabia. And that my conclusion was that beginning in the latter part of 2017 and then intensifying into 2019, that you would see a pretty significant shift there too. So all of a sudden, the last couple months and some of the revelations coming out of Saudi Arabia have really been eye-openers and interesting to me, just seeing what some have described as almost a quiet or silent coup going on with the one particular Saudi prince, really triggering a whole purge of some of the hierarchy in Saudi Arabia and potentially positioning for a future leadership role there. So I don't know how much of it you've seen and read in recent weeks and months, but one of the things that really intrigued me before the last few weeks was when reports were coming out in September, and I would have to even discuss some corresponding analysis that I've done where some of these major Middle East cycles also focused on Israel and Jerusalem, and I explained why I thought September 2017 to September 2018, a new Jewish year, 5778, I believe it is when I thought you would see some very decisive shifts and a real turnabout in Israel. Well, it came out in September that allegedly this same Saudi prince was in Israel having secret meetings, and of course one of the suspected or alleged targets of meetings like that is Iran. And there's even speculation about what the U.S.'s role, tacit approval role, has been in that. Certain agreements and statements that have been made that have even fostered that relationship. So some of this has been very under the radar and very behind the scenes. But the key that I often look for to really signal it, to trigger it, is market movement. And I know since we have talked in late 2015, early 2016, I've had the same conclusion that crude oil cycles bottomed in early 2016, but that you would see a 12 to 18 month bottoming process before the oil markets would start to turn more decisively higher in the third quarter of 2017. And you had unleaded gas and heating oil give some very convincing 2 to 3 month buy signals in mid-year in July, and crude soon followed them. And then more recently, when I was looking for the more accelerated move up, was right after all three of them perpetuated an intermediate cycle in early October. It was an 8-week cycle that had governed successive lows, and it was now at the point where my cycle progression rules tell you to look for an accelerated move to the upside, and that cycle would now start to govern highs. That portion, that 8-week up thrust, was expected between early October and early December, with the first phase being from early October into November 8th to the 13th. That's where I thought we would see an initial peak, and that crude oil, the target that I've published for that, was to get back up to its early year high, right above $58. We've just seen the oil markets fulfill a lot of this as they're heading into this November 8th to 13th time frame, so I think we could see an initial peak here. But it's all kind of, like I said, corroborating the whole bigger picture scenario and really increasing my confidence in what I have described as my expectations for the final months of this year, and then especially the early months of 2018 in a lot of the petroleum markets.
And what is that outlook?
Well, it was for this accelerated move up in an initial surge in October, November, but then some continuation into the early part of next year. I've been publishing some very intriguing cycles that I see where you could see an initial high to this leg up in early 2018. But even the fact that unleaded gas and heating oil have now fulfilled what I call an intra-year V pattern. Basically, it's where a market will set a very convincing top in the beginning of the year. It will trade lower into the middle of the year, and then in the latter part of the year will surge back up and take out those early year highs. That's a multi-year reversal signal, and unleaded gas and heating oil were able to complete that pattern a few weeks ago after that early October buy signal, and so it's all playing into the same scenario, and they have now been hitting 2.5-year highs, so it's all factoring into that outlook for the oil markets and for the Middle East. But I think that there are still a few other shoes to drop, and that it could stretch out throughout that 2018 to 2021 time frame. But from a technical analysis standpoint on the markets, there are these very specific, sometimes multi-week, sometimes multi-month signals and trends that have been signaled, and now some of them coming to fruition.
We'll have more with Eric Hadik right after the break.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead zinc silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineer gold mine in the Atlan district of northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Eric Hadik. Eric, what's your outlook on the stock markets right now?
Stock markets obviously continue to hold up. Even as I've been looking for cycles to top out and roll over on a multi-year basis, I have also been very sticking with the price action and the trends and the technical analysis, which has remained bullish throughout the year, really only triggering 2 to 4 week and in a couple isolated cases a 1 to 2 month correction, but they've obviously continued to climb. One of the interesting things that I've kind of been watching too is that a lot of the global indices that I follow and discuss in my monthly Inside Track late last year and some of them early this year kind of gave new buy signals, new indicators of 3 to 6 month uptrends, but a lot of their related cycles were coming into play in October, November of this year, when I thought that those signals should really mature and begin to roll over. And I've seen some validation to that, but not any strong reversal down signals yet. So I'm just following the trend and following what the price action is showing, but thinking that you're really coming to the end of this 2017, where there were several multi-year cycles indicating that we could see a multi-year top in 2017. Obviously, from a purely yearly cycle basis, that could wait till December 31st and still fulfill it, but I think there's a lot of other things you look for as those first steps in a 1,000-mile journey if the market is going to reverse here. So that's what I'm just kind of keeping my radar up for, to see if there are any convincing signs of a intermediate top. I've got a weekly trend indicator that's really the key for me, and that's the one I need to see turn down before I would be convinced of anything more than a 1 to 2 month top. So I'm not can't deny the bullishness there. and what the price action continues to show. Probably the most recent was in late October when the NASDAQ 100 had pulled back, gone as far as it could, and still remain in a short-term corrective mode, hit several key support points, and I spelled that out in my weekly relay and was discussing how it was starting to signal a rally back to the highs, and 2 days later it took off again, but that seems to have been more not going it on its own, but the tech stocks were really the big movers in that late October, early November surge, and all the others have just kind of marked time, staying below their October highs. And even a couple indexes that I look at often give early warning signals. The Dow Transports and the Russell 2000 have given some signs of 1 to 2 month top, but I need to see them elevate that to the next level to really start to give it credence that we could be seeing something more significant. But until that happens, I just have to respect the trend and but also really just be very careful with what a lot of the longer-term patterns are showing.
We'll have more with Eric Hadik right after this.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Eric Hadik. Eric, it seems to me in the cyber currency space, Bitcoin every day sets a new record high. How long can that last?
Well, at least on a intermediate basis, I'm still focused on mid-November. And, when I was just talking about the oil markets and this cycle progression tool I use, there was a similar pattern unfolding in Bitcoin, and it was even a similar duration, about an 8-week or 2-month cycle. And it timed progressive lows in mid-March and mid-May. That helped time my expectation for a mid-July low after the sharp sell-off that we saw starting in early June. And then it timed a higher low in mid-September, which was the textbook fulfillment of this cycle progression tool. And once you see those 4 successive lows, you usually get the accelerated move up, and it lasts for the full duration of that cycle, so about a 2-month surge. And I had even diagrammed that on my website and in some of the newsletters and reports of the last couple months, but just showing that cycle progression should trigger a sharp rally from mid-September into mid-November, and mid-September did turn out to be the pullback low after Bitcoin had another about a 40% drop. And from a technical standpoint, it was also textbook because it dropped right back to its previous high of around 3,000. It had peaked at about 5,000, dropped back to 3,000, held that key support, and then from there, the combination of these technical and cyclical tools were showing a surge into mid-November. $7,000 was a critical objective once Bitcoin was able to exceed 5,000, but a very similar target of about equal weight or significance is right around the $8,000 level. So, coming into, we're still a week or so away from that mid-November time frame, with Bitcoin approaching, I think it's around 7,700 or so today, or last I looked at it. But I'm going to be watching that time frame and that price. But when you get into a almost parabolic move like this, you're jumping in front of a freight train if you're trying to pick a top, the exact price of it. So I'm watching more to see if it begins to show signs of a peak and begins to roll over a little bit to the downside in the second half of November, and then see if I can get some technical signals there, even though I would certainly warn and caution that a market that's this young in its infancy and with a lot of factors that don't always contribute to good, solid technical analysis. You kind of have to keep all that in mind. So I'm, taking it all with a grain of salt. But I do think that mid-November time frame remains the focus from an intermediate cycle basis. I have to, really emphasize that too. But that we could see some consolidation and probably a lot of volatility following that if it's able to validate that cycle and peak in the mid-November time frame.
Eric, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me back, Jim.
My guest has been Eric Hadik, president of InsideTrack.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. If you have any questions for the show or our guests, you can send them to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.